Welcome, 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 everybody. Very, very excited to see all your beautiful faces. We have a wonderful group of folks who have joined us on Zoom tonight, and we have lots of people who are joining us on Facebook Live. Very excited about that. My name is Mike DeLuca, and I am the host of this show, Secrets to Goal Achievement Mastery. This show is my show. It is not affiliated with any individual group, philosophy, religion, corporation, company, people, entities. It's just little old me and my company, Integrative Wellness and Development, LLC. We do not make any attempts to make claims that you are going to hear things on this show that will give you instant enlightenment or make you an instant millionaire, or we do not diagnose, treat, or prevent any illnesses or conditions. The purpose of this show is to bring beautiful people like you together to explore, to be educated, to educate each other, to share inspiration, perspiration, all kinds of ations that you've gone through in your search for growth and personal development and spiritual unfoldment. And I want to, again, let you know, we have people from all walks of life who are attending tonight's interview, and also on Facebook, people from all backgrounds, all religions, all philosophies, all pursuits, theologies, all kinds of ologies. And with that, that is very, very exciting. And it also is important that we understand that the purpose of this show is to respect the viewpoints and the opinions of everyone who is listening, and really everyone in the world and other worlds. We are all unique and wonderful spiritual and beings that deserve and respect and love. And that's what tonight is all about. Obviously, if you know anything about Rumi, you know anything about Shams, the overriding principle here tonight is to come from divine love, to find that inside of your own heart and then recognize it inside of the hearts of others. It reminds me very much of one of the first stories I ever heard about when Rumi met his teacher, Shams-I-Tabrizi, that Rumi was at this fountain and he was teaching a student, and he had all of his special books, including a book from his father and other notable people who were great, theologians and great philosophers. And Shams came along and threw all the books in the fountain. And Rumi, shocked, looked at him and said, "What are you doing?" And the point Sham was making is we won't find ultimate truth in any belief, any building, any book, or even in the words of any one person, unless we find that inside of the temple of our own heart. And that inside of the temple of our own heart is the doorway to give us access to all of the highest teachings, all of the highest knowledge, and ways for us to live a better life and reach the goals that we have for ourselves, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. And so it's in that spirit of that tonight that we will be having this discussion. And again, very, very excited that you're all here. And I'm going to go to share a screen here. Tell you a little bit about our guest. Tonight's guest, I'm extremely excited, very honored to have Doug Marman on this show. Doug has been writing, lecturing, and leading classes on the exploration of consciousness for over 40 years. He was the chief technology officer for a $1.7 billion division of GE. He was a founder of a technology startup involved with artificial intelligence. He's the holder of over 40 patents that are being currently used in a variety of technologies today. He has worked as a journalist, business unit manager, photographer, marketing manager, and editor. Doug has written and published 8 books and numerous research papers, and his numerous interviews can be found on YouTube. And a little later on, I'll be giving out his website that you can go to get all and see all of the amazing things that Doug is involved in. But with that, I'm very, very honored to introduce you to Doug Marman. And Doug, I'm honored to welcome you here tonight to our show and to joining our viewers here tonight. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, so when you read this incredibly impressive background that you have, Doug, in that you've spent a great deal of your life in technology, in the pursuit of technology to solve problems, in the exploration of physics and electronics and energy, and then the other side of you is this explorer who is exploring spiritually the works of these great, great, beings, these great writers, these great spiritual beings, and writing books about their teachings and digging really, really deep. How did someone with that technical, scientific, logical mind become so attracted to these works of Shams and Rumi and be able to connect with them and be able to bring out the real juice inside of them to us regular everyday folks?
Yeah, I'm a strange dude, Um, I guess if I look back, I see I certainly had an influence from my mother and father. My father
Uh-huh.
was of German descent
Mhm.
and engineer, right? My mother
Wow.
was Italian descent and an artist by nature, So I had these two mixes within me from a young age. But I also had a number of spiritual experiences or experiences that were hard for me to explain at a very young age. And that got me looking for understand way to understand what was going on. How could I explain these things? And it was hard. It was hard for me to find anybody to talk with about it. So I grew up exploring, and the one thing led to another. My interest in understanding things led me to a interest in Isaac Newton's writings. And I thought,
Hmm.
wow, it was not just his insights that he had, but he was exploring things that had been unknown until he explored them. He had a way of finding his way in the dark, you might say. And that fascinated me because I think so much of the time we are in facing an unknown. And I wanted to know what it was that he did there. And then later on, as I got older, meaning around sixth grade or seventh grade, I started studying Einstein's papers. And he had the same thing. He had a tremendous intuitive insight that even his fellow scientists did not follow how deep he went into the insights of what he was understanding. But after I had that interest in science, then back came some inner experiences that I couldn't explain. And my focus changed to that as my primary interest in consciousness. Because I found myself entering into, for example, spontaneously entering into a state where I knew things that I hadn't known the moment before. How did this happen? Where was this state coming from? And all I knew was I was experiencing it, but I couldn't explain it. So that kind of got me started. And then later on, I returned to the interest in science that came later on. Actually, after many years, I picked that back up again. And I suddenly had new insights into those things that I didn't have before.
So, what was it specifically that inspired you about Shams and Rumi that caused you to go down this road to, researching and translating and editing and eventually writing 2 books. That's a lot of work. What inspired you to do that?
Yeah, it was very interesting the way it happened. I mean, I reached a point where I just wanted to read everything I could on anything related to inner understandings or a broadening of the consciousness or other states of awareness. And I ran across a book that was an English translation of his discourses at one of the bookstores I was going through. And I bought the book and brought it home. And I started reading it, and I thought, there's really something incredibly deep going on in what he's saying here. But the words themselves were hiding what was really going on. And I wanted to understand because there was something very strange, mysterious, actually, about the way Rumi talked, the way he expressed himself. And I felt like I was missing something. So just for my own self, I mean, just because I wanted to understand, I basically started writing the discourses down in English and rewriting them to see if I could get more of that inner understanding to come through. And I went through and basically did this through the whole book, all the discourses. And then I went back and did it again because I felt like I had gotten by the time I got through the end of the book, I felt like I was getting close. I was getting to the point where I almost felt I was understanding. And then I rewrote it again. And then I felt like finally I had a sense. I think I understood what he was saying. I could put it into new words that helped it come through. That process was gradual. So it happened over like 10 years, right? So continually going back and going back. And I finally had a sense like I was almost inwardly in communication with Rumi, and I could getting explanations that made sense. And suddenly, so then what I did, the next thing I did was I invited some Sufi friends I had met who had interest in Rumi's writings, and some friends from Ekankar and other studies that I had met that had an interest in Rumi. And they were just gotten together, and I took the first 12 of the discourses that I had put into my own words, and we just went through and talked about them. And what I learned from that was that they were all getting something different from the discourses at different levels. And I realized I needed to rewrite the discourses again. I had now a whole new insight. It opened up how Rumi was coming across at many different levels. And he did it knowingly. He knowingly spoke not at one level, but at many levels. And I had missed how deep that went. So I rewrote again. This is all from my understanding. I'm trying to understand. It's my way of learning. And by writing, I learned. And then later on, I realized I thought maybe this would be of interest to others. And then I decided to share it. And it was then that I ran into actually online. Somebody saw some of the things I was sharing. They contacted me, let me know. It was a woman who lived in Iran at the time. She grew up with Farsi, but more than that, she was a direct descendant of Rumi from her father's side of the family.
Wow.
And she started talking to me about what I was sharing. And she says, honestly, she grew up with all of Rumi's teachings from a young age. Obviously, her father was teaching them. He himself was a professor. But the discourses was something nobody understood. She didn't understand it. Her parents didn't understand it. And when she started reading my translation, she said, I think I'm understanding it now for the first time. That was the first person I heard say that. I've now heard back from over 100 Farsi-speaking people who grew up with Rumi's teachings, and they have all said the same thing. They did not expect anybody could explain the discourses because they're just so hard to understand. But once they read it, they could go back to the original and compare it, and it made sense for the first time. So to me, that was okay. That's a validation. I had accomplished what I was hoping to do for my own self, but it meant something to others as well. So that was what kind of led to all of that. My second book, The Hidden Teachings of Rumi, it happened much later, and by then I met two individuals, Farzad Kalvadi and Mitra Shafai, and we got together to take some of the deepest poems from Rumi's another book of his. It's called Divinity Shams, which is his books written out of love for Shams. And these are the deepest of his teachings. And Farzad and Mitra knew from growing up which ones were the most famous and which ones were the best known. We started basically taking this approach of going back to the original Farsi, because many of these didn't have good English translations. And we did run across a few that we could compare, but boy, did they come out with a very different end result than our approach. But we tried to take it very carefully, go back to the original Farsi, go through each of the words, word by word. What are the possible meanings of the words? And Farsi is a very special language. In English, if you have a word like language, it's tied to other words that mean something similar to it. And like the word spirit and inspiration go back to the same source, right? They have the same common source. In Farsi, a word can mean multiple different things that don't seem to have any direct relationship. So when you use a word, it's like it has many levels to it automatically. It calls to mind a number of different possibilities. So it's by nature a very poetic language.
A very poetic and in my beginnings of reading Rumi's work, there was this simultaneous, seeing simultaneously this concept of love. There was love for his teacher, love and respect that you would have for a great teacher. You could tell there was love for the divine, but you could also tell there was love that could be applied in our everyday human existence. So there were three different currents or four different currents going on simultaneously. And yet, when I was reading it, it was like, there's something else here. There's something hidden here. And even though now, his writings, they've been, embraced by members of Islam, they've been embraced by the Sufi community, by other spiritual and religious, groups and lineages. Still, there was almost there was a purposeful hiding, very carefully choosing the words, the imagery, and the hiding because of the control and the fundamentalist type of environments that were going on then and are going on now in certain parts of the world where it's not safe to say what you're really saying, but those who are like-hearted, like-minded, and like-spirited will understand the words you are saying. Do you find that to be true in Rumi's writings?
When I first began my work on the discourses, I could see, like, I had the sense something was hidden and intentionally.
Yeah.
And I came to the same conclusion at first, like you did, that it was the nature of the world he lived in. You couldn't speak necessarily openly without potentially getting into trouble, right? And serious trouble. And
Yeah.
but as we got into the second, when we started doing these other poems, actually a new perspective opened up for me. And that was, he was hiding them because they can only be understood by the heart
Yes.
and not understood with the mind. And he was hiding them in a way that if you wanted to find them, you had to use your heart to understand them. And in that state, it didn't matter all the outer stuff about whose opinions about what was right or what was wrong. If that disappeared in that condition. So I began to realize that was his primary reason for doing it. He may have been pushed somewhat because of the nature of you can't speak too openly about some things. But that in the end was not what pushed him to it. It was because to stop people from trying to understand things with their mind, which is the way we all are trained. We all grow up understanding that way. And you need a whole different way to understand with the heart, so seeing with the heart, you might say.
Now, Rumi was respected by royalty. He was a professor, right, and taught under and for royalty and great universities of the time. But what was the inspiration, or what was the catalyst that caused him to go from the more more philosophical and more academic and instructional to this incredible spiritual, pursuit and spiritual serving of others and the world? What caused that, and how did he make that big jump?
There were two steps to it. First, his father was himself a recognized spiritual leader.
Ah,
And so his father made sure that he not only got the spiritual background with meeting and studying under different Sufis and different spiritual, luminaries of the time, and met them personally in many cases. But he also made him sure he got a regular education on all the sciences known at the time. And so he was fully trained in that stuff. And so when he speaks about those things, you can see he's speaking from something he knows. But the second big change was when he met Shams. And when Shams met him, the big message Shams was saying, all that stuff you've learned, all that knowledge, throw it away. What you're looking for, you can't find that way. And basically, you have to find it through personal inner experience. And that was what he started happening, a whole new series of inner experiences with Shams that changed him dramatically, changed his whole life.
and who was Shams?
So Shams was kind of a wandering dervish, as they call him, or a Sufi.
Sufi.
And he had a reputation for being kind of a wild man, and he could speak out very suddenly and say things very directly, and people would go, "Whoa," and stir things up. He himself admitted this, and no, he was once told, people asked, "Why can't you just speak openly what you're saying?" He said, "If I did that, you would all be driving me away." you know, so he intentionally did not, but he said he was looking for someone. He went around the world meeting with all the leading spiritual leaders at the time, and he was looking for somebody. And then when he met Rumi, he said, "I found who I was looking for. This is the one I've been looking for." And so his life changed at that time too.
Now, I've heard stories of Shams wandering and coming into contact with other spiritual teachers and seekers, and there was even a book I read that Shams actually was a friend or befriended Saint Francis of Assisi when Saint Francis traveled with the movement from Europe, throughout Europe to the Middle East, and that the two of them became connected and sort of spiritual brethren. And whether that's true or not, the fact that Shams did connect with people from all backgrounds and all philosophies and theologies is part of why today he is so revered and honored and still continues to, influence people spiritually, but in his own way. Um, and it's such a beautiful example of when the student is ready, the teacher appears, but then when a true student appreciates, sees, feels, and recognizes the value, the preciousness of what a teacher has to offer, that student becomes transformed and masterful. And that's an inspiration for all of us that if we continue to pursue our own personal connection with the divine, with spirit, with divine love, that temple within. Rumi was a big believer and in reading your books, Rumi was a big believer in the wisdom that comes to us through dreams,
Mm.
which that really excited me, that he understood way, way back then the connection between how our divine self and the divine itself speaks to us through our dreams. And that if we respect them, honor them, and pay attention to them and dive into them, that's a way of connecting with that limitless wisdom. So that was very cool when I saw that in your book.
Yeah. He actually says at one of his poems, he says, I speak the language of dreams. In other words, some of the ways he's hiding the hidden teachings is by speaking in a language like dreams speak. And like you can have a dream and say, now this is saying something, but what is it saying? But if you learn his language, you also learn the language of dreams. It's the same language. It's the same. And that's the thing that was remarkable for me. I started while working on Rumi's books, I started being able to understand my own dream language, what my dreams were saying in a new way, to the point where I would have a dream, and in the dream, I would have a voiceover. I'm explaining the dream in my dream. It was happening like that, It changed, really, because I think that was the thing that what was so remarkable, what's so timeless about Rumi is that's the thing that he's really bringing out is that understanding, how to understand it without the mind, with the heart, and you might see as life sees, see things as love sees, from the perspective of love or from the perspective of life, you know.
I'd like to just take a break for a second, Doug, and I wanted to share with folks your website. And basically, where first of all, you can see the cover of the two books we're discussing tonight if you haven't already seen them. And if you don't already have them, I highly suggest that you get them. And to help facilitate that, I've made a number of sets of these books available to folks if they made a $10 donation to the food bank of their choice. And we've given away most of those free sets of Doug's book, but I'm going to extend 5 more sets because several of the people who attend regularly my show are down where the hurricane hit hard and are without power and without food and without clean water, and as are many of the people down there. So I'm going to extend my offer that if you Facebook DM me a copy of a receipt of a donation you made to a organization of your choice that is helping deal with helping the folks who are victims of the hurricane, I will send you, if you just make a donation of $10 to one of these groups, I will send you both copies, The Hidden Teachings of Rumi and It Is What It Is. I will personally purchase them and I will personally ship them to you if you've made that donation of $10 or more and send me the receipt. For those of you who want to know more about Doug and his work, if you go to spiritualdialogues.com, I purchased every single one of his books and I'm going through them. I recommend you do so also. Also on that website, great videos, YouTube videos of interviews Doug has done on a number of other shows, lectures he's given. Highly recommend that. So write that down, spiritualdialogues.com. It's real easy to remember. And also, again, if you would like a free copy of both of Doug's books, if you make a donation to any hurricane relief organization and send me the receipt, I'll be happy at my own expense to send you copies of these two amazing books. So that's sort of our commercial break. But I wanted to get that in there because the hurricane relief is very important to me, and I really want to get your books into people's hands, Doug. So I'll be ordering another bunch from you, and if folks send me those receipts, I'll be shipping them out to you. But then the rest of you go to the site, buy your own books, and see all the other wonderful books that Doug has, spiritualdialogues.com. And with that, I wanted to jump back into some questions. We had mentioned, Doug, about, Rumi being able to hide secret truths inside of the beautiful truths that he was sharing. And what do you feel, having spent so much time and, doing these books, talking with all these people, what do you find and what do you feel are the most important secret messages that Rumi was trying to communicate to the world that you discuss in your books? Could you share a few of them that you've discovered?
Yeah, I think it comes down to something very simple in a way. It applies on many different levels, which is where it becomes complicated. But the simple part of it is, you could put it this way: when most people talk about our awareness or consciousness, they talk about conscious thought on the one hand, which is many ways is speaking in an objective way when you're talking about things in an objective way. And then there's the subjective side, which is what our own inner perceptions are. And generally in philosophy and in many religions, it's like those are the two opposites. You have objectivity and you have subjectivity. And then you end up with this problem like, well, then it's called the mind-body problem. How does the mind control the body? If it's objective or subjective, there's a gap between, there's something missing. And that gap is exactly what Rumi was focusing on. There's something missing. There's another lens. There's another way of seeing. And that is through relationships. Because when you form a relationship with someone, when you see the you in them, in other words, that you really see them, or when someone really sees you, you feel it, you recognize something different is going on. And when you have a friendship or have love between you and another, whether it's in your family or other kinds of deep relationships, something exists between you and another person that's private. It's between you and it's shared experience. It's a shared experience. It's a shared sense of space that belongs to the both of you. And that shared experience is seeing with the heart. That's what Rumi is talking about. And he points out some of the things you recognize. With that lens, you forget yourself. You are totally lost in you. And you forget yourself. And you can have the same experience when you're doing something you love doing. You forget yourself, and time can go by and you don't even realize how much time has gone by. That is one of the characteristic things about that state. Another characteristic quality of that state is everything is personal. It's absolutely personal. The philosophers can talk about things, about general things, about life in general, or what's the purpose of life in general, things. Every one of Rumi's talks that he gave in his discourses and every one of his poems, he never once talks generally about anything. Everything is specific and personal. And that's one of the reasons that's so timeless, because he's really speaking that way. And so one of the things that happens is tying this now into spiritual experience. When you're having a spiritual experience, you really lose yourself in that experience. It's like your sense of self disappears and you're totally caught up in the experience itself. And so that's where Rumi is going with this. It says this is the door that opens the way to understand our inner experiences and what they mean.
When I hear you speak about losing yourself, it brings to mind for me and to heart to me that when we lose ourself, the illusion of who we've been trained to think we are or see ourselves as and see others as, if we lose ourself, if we become the no one, the no thing, the nowhere, suddenly all that separates us from our limitless self, all that separates us from the divine, all that separates us from each other is also lost and disappears. And now what we're left with is this incredible connectivity.
Mm.
And understanding that we are connected to everyone, every soul, every being, everything, every place, every time. We are connected to all of that because we are part of the all that is the all,
Yeah.
right? And that's the feeling I got when you were talking about this. A lot of people talk about the quantum field, and we'll get into that later, but there's so many movements right now in the world of quantum medicine and quantum healing, where individuals understand if we let go of the things that are separating us from life, from spirit, from each other, if we let go of all of that, it then is free to communicate with us on an atomic level, and we can harmonize with it just like we can harmonize with each other and have a better understanding of where somebody's coming from, right? We can listen with our ears and our mind, or we can harmonize our hearts, remove the shells, and just have love embrace love, and love communicate with love, just as Rumi seemed to communicate with Shams and the divine with this language of love that was beyond all mental, psychological and cranial, energies. So that's very, very powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think if you don't mind, Doug, I think this is a good time to open up to questions,
Sure.
because this is my favorite part when we do the show, and that's hearing from the audience. You've been listening to us. We really want to hear from you. What brought you here tonight? What excites you about Rumi's teachings and Sham's teachings? Maybe some questions you have for Doug. I would ask that we respect each other by using your golden hand, and you can find your golden hand. You guys know where that is. It says react on the bottom of your Zoom. There's a little heart there. If you click on that, it says react. And then on the bottom of that, it says raise hand with a little golden hand. So what we'll do is, if you would like to ask a question of Doug, or if you have a comment about what we've been talking about, I would ask two things. Number one, raise your hand and wait to be acknowledged. And if you're going to share a comment, We have a lot of people here who want to share tonight. So please, if you're going to make a comment, could you please make it like 1 or 2 sentences, rather than recite all of Rumi's discourses and poems at once. This is not the time for that. We want to try to get as many people in as possible. So to respect your time. So who would like to be the first person to ask a question of Doug, or make a comment or talk about, their favorite Rumi poem? The floor is now yours. You've been patient. Go ahead, raise your golden hand, and we'll be happy to call on you one at a time. Or I'll be happy to call on you. Okay. Thelma, you're the first golden hand. That's great. Thank you for being
Okay.
brave, and let's hear what you have to ask.
Well, thank you, Doug, for that information. I've been making notes. And at one point you asked, how does the mind control the body? And something is missing there. Can you kind of explain that a little bit for me?
Sure. This extra, I call them lenses of perception. This lens, one of the lenses of perception is subjective. We all know that. That's what we experience, and only it belongs to us. We can talk about it, but nobody really knows what we experience. And then you have the objective, which is something that everybody kind of knows and agrees to objectively outside. It's like being an outside observer. This, what I call the second person lens, is this lens of relationships where you see and share an experience with someone else. Well, it turns out that let's say we as soul, inhabit a body. We are not our body. We have a relationship with our body. That relationship is what bridges soul to the body. And it's just like, think about the horse whisperers, these people who know how to tame a horse, or even wild horses, or horses that have been beaten and abused. They can calm them down and learn they form a relationship with the horse that is so close, the horse invites them to ride them. And they can become so close in their movements that the rider only has to tilt his head and the horse turns. Well, he has to lean slightly and the horse knows. And they move as one, or like two good dancers. They dance as one. That's our relationship with our body is so close. We think about getting up to go for a walk, and our body takes us there. So that's how that works.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Yes. Rasul? Am I pronouncing it right? Rasul?
Rasul, hi. You can ask a question now.
We're not hearing you. Maybe you need to turn your microphone up, or...
Yeah, I'm not hearing. Rasul, can you hear us?
No.
Now we hear. Now we hear.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, wonderful.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, because audio and video are coming from two different sources. Anyway, thank you, Michael, and thank you, Doug, for this presentation. So I waited and I didn't see nobody raising hands. So basically, I raised my hand to mention a question. And it's actually, how can we keep our focus in today's world on spirituality? With all these wars and chaos going through the world, is actually time passing? Is the world getting more spiritual or less spiritual? So I'm kind of lost, basically. So it's getting harder for me, I think, as time passes, to focus on spiritual things. many people laugh at us, when we talk about subjects not related to war, economy, etc. So what is your advice? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, the question is, is the world getting worse or is it getting better? It all depends on the lens you use and the way you look at things. And that's what's fascinating. So if we have an objective look at things, it feels like in some ways we're no longer, we've wandered away from where the world we grew up in. It's not the same world. And so many people want to go back to the way things were, but you can't. We're like, life is like a river. And the river doesn't go backwards, it keeps flowing. So the world can look like it's not familiar, less familiar because of all the changes that are going on. But if you use the lens that Rumi talks about, and you look with the lens of seeing how life sees things, then you see it's continually changing. And behind those changes, there are things being learned. There are things being developed. I mean, the very things that seem to get in the way and cause the troubles cause people to rise up to overcome them that they wouldn't have done if those things had not been in their way. To make things, to help things better. But what I think the most important thing is for us to do as an individual is find a place in ourselves where we can look and see in the world the value in what's happening. Can we see, in other words, as if everything that was happening is personal and everything being learned is a personal lesson? Can we understand what those lessons are? And by looking for those lessons, we transform the way we look at those things, the way we see those things. And I'll tell you just as an example. I've had this experience, and I've talked with others who've had a dream experience with one of the leading politicians that seems to be so much of the cause of the problem in the United States. And what we found, both me and the others I've talked with, is that we had a personal meeting with the person. He invited us in and he listened to us. And that changed everything. Because when you see another person as soul, and when you really see you really see them, that changes. It suddenly becomes a meaningful experience, no matter what else is going on. It transforms the experience of what's going on. If you can look back in history, one of the most remarkable times in the United States was with the Second World War, when they basically tried to avoid getting involved and finally had to get involved. And the whole country came together, making sacrifices. They stopped using sugar to send the sugar over to the soldiers. They stopped using copper and silver and all those metals. That you go back and you look at the coins made at those times, they were not made of copper or silver. And they needed those metals. There was people that made sacrifices. The men were going over, the women started going to the shipyards to do the work. And after the war was over, the country felt it had made a huge sacrifice for something that was really meaningful and right. It changed everything. It changed the way they saw themselves. Ended up having the biggest boost in economy for a long time after that because of that change. So how we see things and how we approach things, we have the ability to rewrite the story of what that experience means to ourselves. We can be the author of how that experience, what it will mean to us in terms of a personal experience.
And adding to that, there is great power in focusing on shining our own light as brightly as possible every day, bringing as much love into ourselves and into the world every day, and seeing beyond what the everyday viewpoint is, seeing more deeply, as Doug was talking about, in Rumi's perspective of seeing love hiding, behind all of the drama that goes on. There's an old saying, the wolf that we choose to feed is the one that will survive. The plant we choose to water is the one that will grow. If we learn to put our attention every day on the very highest, have that coming through us, to us, and through us, to everyone and everything, it makes a difference. And then when we recognize that, and I love to do this when I'm in the checkout line, for example, at the grocery store, taking that one moment to look in the eyes of the person who's checking me through and seeing the dedication and asking them, what do you love about what you're doing? Oh, I love serving the people. I love taking care of the customers, and then complimenting on what a good job they do. We might think that this one little thing is like trying to, put a forest fire out with a spoonful of water, but it's not. It has tremendous repercussions in a positive way. Every time that we come from love and we recognize that in others, and we see the world as a creation of the divine, and that there is purpose in everything. Things that we see as positive, things that we see as negative, there is divine purpose to everything. And we want to look for that purpose, look for the message, the guidance. So I apologize. I wanted to add that.
No, I'm going to go on what you're saying is one of the most important things about this seeing with the heart is that when you look at all these things happening in politics or wars and, people dying and being killed and stuff like this, those are things we can't personally do anything about. We can see them, but we see them as outside observers. That's the objective side. When it comes to life, we can only experience life when we're involved with what we are directly involved with. So that means the people that we meet every day, the people that we are close to, the people that we work with, those are the personal things that make life what it is. There was once a famous saying that if everybody's trying to fix the world like it's broken, and all those people who are trying to fix this broken world are actually making the world worse than it was. That if everybody just stopped trying to fix it. But I think one of our things in the modern day is we spend so much time looking objectively at things from all over the world. And reporters will find the worst thing they can find. I once called newspapers the daily disaster. They would search across the world to find the worst disaster to bring it to your home, but really, when it comes to life, it's what you're involved with. And I think that's where we really need to learn to move into that sense. And it transforms it. It transforms it. Then you see everything different.
Thank you so much, Michael and Doug, for your description. It's very hard to be observing all these chaos and then, keep spirituality. Thank you. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, good question.
Thank you. Bill Booens, you had a question. Would you unmute yourself?
I did. I assume you can hear me, correct?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Okay, and as I tell people, call me whatever you want. Just please don't call me late for dinner. It's pronounced Bevins, but it looks like Bevins, so it's understandable. So good evening to you, Doug. If you're in, if it's evening time.
Not for me. Yeah.
And I apologize. I was out and about doing some honeydews. I got in a little bit late, so I had got an important question for you from me. I like Rumi a lot, and I emphasize a lot. And I'm curious, I've got a question for you. I'll give you a quick little background, then I'll shut up and listen to you. My favorite Rumi poem is Do Not Despair. And my question to you is, and you may have already said this and I missed it because I came in late. What is your favorite Rumi poem?
Oh, oh,
If you had to pick one, and right now I'm going to say, Doug, pick one, please. So,
okay.
well,
What
or
comes
pick
to
two,
mind?
or pick two if there's two.
There is a long list.
Yeah,
So hard to
no, I
pick
get
the best one. But I would say that the thing that really comes to mind right now while you're asking is a poem from his book called the Masnavi. And it's what's sometimes called the Song of the Reed. And it's the
Yes.
song, it's about the reed and its wailing for being lost from its home. And that reed, of course, then is used in instruments like an oboe or clarinet or other musical instruments. And you hear the wailing sound, that wailing sound of somebody who's lost and separated from their love. And that what he describes in there is just incredible, truly incredible.
So what is the exact name of that poem? The Reed?
Yeah, would you like me to read it?
Oh, thank you.
Uh,
Yes.
Let's see here if I can find it here.
Yeah, and I assume it signifies soul's separation from God, or soul's ignorance, not recognizing its true identity, its true self.
Yes, right. Okay. Listen to the reed tell its tale, complaining of separation. Ever since I was parted from the reed bed, my song has caused men and women to moan. I search for hearts torn by separation to sing of the pain of love's desire. Whoever is far from home longs for the time of reunion. Wherever I go, I sing my wailful tones, making friends of those lost in sorrow, as well as those that are rejoicing. They all become my friends, but each from their own opinion. None seek out the true secrets that I contain. My secret is near to my plaintive sound, but ears and eyes lack the light to see it. Nothing keeps the body from the soul, nor soul from the body. Still, the soul is not permitted to be seen. This sound of the reed does not come from wind, but from fire. Whoever lacks this fire is nothing. It is the fire of love that is in the reed. It is the fervor of love that is in the wine. The reed is the companion of everyone who is parted from a friend. Its music tears away our separations. Whoever saw a poison and an antidote, like the reed. Whoever saw such a sympathizer and longing lover like the reed. The reed song describes the way, full of blood, and tells the stories of lovers' passion. But only to the senseless is confided the sense of this story. The tongue has no customer except the ear. So,
Thanks. Do you, and I assume you speak or you write and read Persian-Arabic?
I don't personally speak Farsi or write Farsi, but I have worked with, like in this case, this book here I was reading from, you'll see Farzad and Mitra, and they grew up not only speaking Farsi, but Farzad himself studied Old Farsi, you know, the wording that was used back in the day when Rumi wrote. And
Yeah.
and he's related to a family of Sufis. So he grew up with the
Yeah.
Sufi teaching.
As you know, I think Kabir is closely related to Rumi in terms of his tone, his point of view, and all that. And when I was going to university, I studied Sanskrit, Hindi, and Urdu, and I actually studied Middle Hindi so I could actually read Kabir without, because Rumi and all these, it's so dependent upon the translator.
Right.
Can they really translate the nuance of what's truly being said? Thank you, Doug.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Be interesting to talk more someday.
Well, I thank you. And thank you very much, Michael, for making this possible. I really appreciate it very much.
You're welcome. Thanks for sharing your thoughts and your question. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, this is the very spirit of why I started the show. I don't do this show to sell anything. I don't do this show for monetary purposes. I do this show because I feel the wisdom that comes from the people that I have on the show, like Doug, um, are invaluable wisdom for people to know. And because I really love the people who watch my show and attend these meetings, I truly love them. And because of that love, like Rumi's love, and because of that love beckons to me to take this time every week or so to bring this wisdom, this love, these messages of liberation to people. That's my way of contributing in a small way to awakening the consciousness of the world and of the individuals who tune in. So everyone who is listening here today, you are contributing to the awakening of the heart and the awakening of the consciousness and the spreading of love, just with your attention and your appreciation, your gratitude for this information being shared. Okay, who else? Who else has a question or a comment they'd like to share? And if you don't know how to raise your golden hand, just go in the chat and send me a message. Stan. Hey, Stan, how are you?
Yeah, hi, thank you. I'm really intrigued by this idea of the dialogue. You place a centrality in. I kind of just wanted you to talk more on that subject of the centrality of dialogue. I found that really intriguing. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thanks for raising that, because I love that subject as well. When you talk about this, the relationship experience, there's the you, and you're exchanging and sharing something with another. That the heart of that is a dialogue. That's what dialogue is. It's really listening. To have real true dialogue, you need to listen deeply to what another person's saying, as if you're in a relationship with that person. And then when you speak, they listen back. That sharing, that kind of dialogue is what transforms us, changes our lives, and it changes countries. It's when you have monologues and people just supposed to be listening. It's not the same. You don't get to the same level of truth, because there's something in taking in somebody else's words and really letting them sink into it, and then speaking back, actually saying something in response to build on that, to add to that. That is creative. It's creating something. It's not just sharing information. It's something far more than that. Yeah. So dialogue really is very powerful, very powerful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would add there's great power in dialogue, not only with another individual, but dialogue with our own higher self
Mhm.
on a regular basis, to open up that connection, because time is an illusion. And Doug and I were talking about this prior to the show, that when we recognize that our past, our present, and our future selves are all connected because time is an illusion, when we remove the separation between those three aspects of ourselves, it is possible, whenever we are encountering a challenge, that we simply can recognize there is a higher part of us that has already faced every single challenge, has studied every single problem, and has tapped into the limitless reservoir of knowledge and wisdom. And that is part of our spiritual DNA. It is within our DNA to have access to all of that. And we can consult and trust and honor that higher self, that higher knowledge, that is already inside of us versus, oh, I'm only here and maybe someday, somehow, perhaps, maybe if I'm good enough and strong enough and smart enough and spiritual enough and all of these enoughs, that maybe someday I'll know this or I'll be this or I'll become this. And there is no need to know, be, and become. We are. We already are. It's a question of moving our attention from the illusion of being less or being separate from the all, and then recognizing that if we're made of the all, then we are the all. And we have access to the all within the all right now. But there is a great price to be paid for that in responsibility to then what do you do with that? And can you have that experience on a regular basis and recognize that also that all in the all is in everyone else. That wisdom is in everyone else, right? That power is within everyone else. That divinity is within everyone else. And now we become responsible ourselves. But when we do that, miracles happen, right? And the intensity of love begins to mirror the intensity of love that we find in Rumi's writings, right? That intensity of a burning, that almost the divine is like, like that person you've always dreamed of being in a relationship with, right? That perfect partner, that perfect spouse, that perfect lover, right? When I read Rumi's writings, I feel that burning love that, I know I felt in my life and yet even beyond that. And wow, if we could feel that every day, if we could dive into that as if it were a pool, every day, our ability to love would grow exponentially, and our ability to connect with our higher self would grow exponentially if love was the thing we were so completely focused on and in love with. To be in love with love itself is what I get from Rumi's writings.
Amen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Stan. And Stan, thank you for your help in getting the word out about tonight's interview. I really appreciate it. We've had a wonderful showing on attendance of people tonight. I appreciate your help with that, and Bill as well.
Glad to help.
Yeah, yeah. Who else? Ah, Susan. Hey, Susan.
Hey, Mike.
Hey.
Hi, everybody. Oh, this is so beautiful. Thank you. And Doug, I've read a lot about you. I haven't met you, obviously, but I'm so thrilled to empty my mind and open my heart to this beautiful discussion. And that's what I wanted to speak about is that when I had an experience last night, I'll try and be short with it, try to. Usually when I wake up, and I've struggled with this most of my life, I wake up with 1,000 squirrels in my head. And I try to do my spiritual exercises, and I end up getting all tangled up with what they call the monkeys of the mind. So I decided to live my life as a spiritual exercise as best I could because of that reason. And something happened to me last night where I had left my phone down in the car, and I was so exhausted, and I was supposed to go to a concert with a friend to listen to some Chopin etudes by a guy playing. And I was so exhausted that I fell asleep. And I obviously didn't do that. And I woke up, and it was as if all of that had moved away. All of that chatter had left. And I'm not saying it was the use of the phone. I'm not going there. But I'm saying that I had asked for a very long time to quiet my mind, to learn how to quiet my mind for years now. And last night, somehow, my mind was empty when I woke up. You know, I didn't know what time it was. And honestly, I didn't care. I didn't want to know. So I got up and I did a few things. And then I comfortably went back to sleep with no discussion in my head, no quandary or query or anything. And I did this all night, all through the night. I woke up a couple of times and I went through my contemplations and my readings, and they just sunk right into my heart. And what I think when I read Rumi, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Rumi empties my mind. The part of the mind that likes to work overtime. I know that I need my mind in order to read Rumi, but the part that works overtime, I don't. And so when I read Rumi, all of a sudden he gets so deep into my being, into my body, that because I had no problems with going outside of my body. I can zone out like anything, but to be and take in as a human body, to bring in the soul, I think that's what Rumi does for me. And I begin to feel one, and I begin to feel a balance, and I begin to feel that ecstasy. I'll call it an ecstasy that only you can read in poetry, that is really, really deep and beautiful and heartfelt. So I just want to thank you for your work. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, that is a really special experience to have when it just all gets washed away. And Rumi talks a lot about that state. He says, when you're in a truly spiritual state, you're like a mirror and you reflect everything as it is. And that you have like the stillness of the water on, and it reflects the light off of it perfectly. When the mind is all going, you don't see the reflection, you just see choppy water everywhere. But here's another part of this that's tied into this idea of it being a mirror. When you're not thinking of yourself, when you're thinking of something or someone else that is so much that you forget yourself, then it's like taking two mirrors and putting them face to face. And what happens when you look is you see a hallway of mirrors that goes on infinitely. And they see a hallway of mirrors. It's like this space opens up that goes forever and it reaches forever. That experience is the experience of being and touch. Sometimes you can meet an inner being that has that feeling, and you're with them and you forget everything else. And that hallway opens up. It's like that experience. Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you, Susan. And thank you, Doug, for that. Who else? We have time for a few more. Ah, okay. Nancy. Hey, Nancy.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you very much for doing this. Hi, Doug. Hi, everybody. So what really, I've always been really confused by Rumi and extremely drawn to Rumi, both at the same time. And so I can't wait to read your books, Doug. What really got me was that the lens, what lens you look through, what we talked about tonight, and then when Mike was talking about so much love. And so here's a quick experience. When I'm seeing an experience and I'm like upset, like, oh, that person hurt my feelings, blah, 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 whatever it may be. And then I get to that place, my higher self, and all this love. Then I give love to the part of me that's all upset. It's as if I turned the channel. Remember when you turn channels? I turned the channel of my reality into something that is so real that my mind doesn't get it, but I sense it. And then my whole life starts to be different. Every interaction is different. And sometimes I feel like I'm on a different planet all of a sudden, but there's so much love. And you can't help but give it out. Is that the lens type of thing? So
Yes.
how you interpret an experience or even what you read depends on the lens you're looking through?
Right. When you switch channels, you changed lenses. And these lenses go very deep. They're not like a new belief. That's not has nothing, it's experience. It's something you experience. And when you switch into that lens that you switched into, the controversy between you, what you were going through, the upset or the feelings, and the thoughts you're having about that just disappear. Because you switched to a lens where, in a sense, it was not about what you forget about what you were going through. It doesn't matter anymore, right? Because in the state you're in. And the way I consider it is like we have a relationship with life. It's actually a relationship. It's actually a dialogue. Something goes wrong in our life. Life is actually speaking to us. It's actually saying something to us with what went wrong. And if we start to look, what is life saying? What does life want from me? Not what do I want, but what does life want me to do about this situation? It changes the story. As soon as I start looking at it from life's perspective, it switches the channel, just like you're saying. It switches the channel. And Rumi has lots of examples of this in his stories and in his talks and stuff. It's amazing how deeply he understood this. He talks about in the Song of the Reed that I read about the separation. People feel this loss. Let's say a classic example is someone passes on, a loved one passes on, and there's a feeling of loss and the separation. It's like the love is still there, but it's not connecting, and this feels like this separation. And what Rumi is getting at in there is this: there's no separation, actually, as long as that relationship is there, ever existed, it still does exist. And there's nothing stopping us as soul from going right through and connecting again. But it's our mind that limits us. Our mind says, oh no, I can't anymore because they've passed on, or I can't, we put all these. But if you follow the wisdom of your heart, the heart knows how to reconnect. The heart knows. There's nothing that can separate, no time, no space that can separate people that share a relationship experience. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Doug, for that. Catherine, how are you? Please unmute yourself so we can hear your question and comment.
Oh, yes, that would help, wouldn't it?
Hi.
Yes, it's great to be here, Mike and Doug. This is wonderful. And I only found out about this happening like about an hour or so ago. I said, I can't miss this for sure. Following what Nancy just said, and a couple other places, people were saying things. What keeps coming to me is a sense of intimacy with Rumi's writing. that took me a very long time to realize, years and years of reading Rumi. And it's like, what is attracting me to this writing? And it's like, oh my gosh, there's very few people can write things that give me that sense of intimacy where I can just drop everything, like surrender and truly trust that there's even someone else out there, even if it was hundreds of years ago, that is speaking, as you said, Doug, directly to my heart. Not but I mean directly, like, woo, how did you know? I recognize that. And it seems like Rumi recognizes me, even with this, so that there's no temporal dimension, no spatial dimension. And it's like, wow, I realized that my whole life I've been looking for that sense of intimacy. And like I said, that's taken me a long time to realize. And I think some things that have thrown me off is when a lot of wonderful people, you can read their writings and you feel connected a little bit, but it doesn't have that multi-level thing. And what you were speaking of, Doug, how Rumi writes on many levels at the same time. That's just, oh, that's like pure gold to me. Because I actually don't like when, even if something could be very poetic to me, and but insult my intelligence, and that, well, I can't. The intimacy's gone. I don't want anything like that. But yeah, and along with that intimacy, and I don't know really truly how they're connected, but the trust element, the trust and surrender that comes with that sense of intimacy. And that's hard to find. It's been hard to find in my life, and certainly out in the world. I've always known it's not outside there, because there's not much I trust out there. But and it's helped me to come to find a trust within myself. And I think it's tied up with what you talked about, Doug, about relationship. I'm learning lots of new things of what relationship means. Like, how do we have a relationship? Is there harmony involved? I guess. I don't know. But I think more than anything, I think it's that trust element. How can you have a relationship if there's no trust?
Yeah.
Anyway, and anything you want to add to all of that, Doug, I'd love it. Thank you.
Yeah. It's trust. One of the things, when you look at the way a relationship develops, it may start with a first impression you have, a meeting someone with a first impression. You think, oh, this person sounds kind of interesting. I might like to know more. But everything changes depending on how they respond, or what you ask, or what you say, or how they respond. And what you find out as a relationship gets deeper and closer, you are adjusting to the other person, they're adjusting to you. And that what you develops out of this is a shared recognition that the relationship is important to both of them. And once that hits, it becomes real. The relationship becomes real. When you both recognize it, when you both realize it, and when you express it to each other. The same thing happens with our relationship with life. A spiritual path is a relationship with life. The path itself is a path of life. And we develop a relationship. And the more we are intrigued and drawn on that spiritual path, that path of life, the more life is drawn to us. And the more life coaxes us and moves us along and pulls us along. We can come closer and closer. So it happens at many, many levels. Many, many levels. Yes. And one of the things I talk about in the beginning, in the introduction of the Hidden Teachings of Rumi book, was what a remarkable experience was for me and Mitra and Farzad working on taking the original Farsi words and finding the meaning and coming up with an English version, and discovering that it was nothing like we first thought. It developed and it suddenly spoke to us. And that's when we knew we had the meaning right. That was one of the ways we knew it. But we also found some other outer confirmations. We found that there were some stories written back during or shortly after Rumi's life that told about stories about some of the poems. And they actually confirmed exactly that we had gotten the interpretation correctly. So we got some outside confirmation, which was validating. And as we went along in the book, we started getting to some poems, and suddenly they were speaking to us personally. Like what we were finding was for us and our discovery, our meaning. And like you said, it was timeless. It gave this feeling of timeless. And Rumi himself said he knew his words would not just for the people of his time, but for 1,000 years after. He knew that. He was speaking not just to his own people. He knew because that language is timeless.
Mm.
Yeah. Thank you, Catherine.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Doug, for that. Doug, we have a question. Can you share the relevance of the dearest ones, the veiled ones, or the silent ones in our lives?
Okay. Yeah, that actually was one of the things that came up in this book on the Hidden Teachings of Rumi. This is one of the things that actually personally spoke to us when we got to them. We had no idea what the poem was about until we dug in and began to realize it. And Rumi himself uses the term the silent ones in his discourses. He refers to these very special beings. But in his poems, he actually goes far deeper than that. He says how you can meet and learn from the silent ones, how you can have a relationship in a sense from the silent ones. And he basically shows that it gives a sense of how the silent ones live in a state beyond all the other states. And they're in touch, can be in touch with any of the planes, any of the states, without having to have a body in the world. They can still be in touch and still influence. But the way they work is as like catalysts. They act like catalysts. They don't have to say a word. Just being in the presence of the silent one brings about this change. And so, but it's remarkable that the role he talks about, they actually were there in the forming of the planets so that life was capable of existing on those planets. They actually brought about the changes that made life possible. Remarkable insights that Rumi had in all that. And he discovered, one of the things he discovered in one of the poems he says is he discovered that Shams himself was in the room with the silent ones. He was in that world of the silent ones. So he had direct connection. He was involved with them. And that was itself really deeply meaningful to think about what does that mean, So,
Wow.
yeah, there's a lot there.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah.
To put it in the word, Rumi described the silent ones as these special beings that basically touched people's lives and their lives changed. Sometimes unknowingly. He talked about once someone going in, felt being called into a mosque to pray. And he gets in there and basically suddenly he gets into a state of just absolute ecstasy. And he forgets where he is and all this other thing. And he realizes when he leaves, he'd been answered. The question he'd been asking had been answered. And, what Rumi said was one of the silent ones had basically seen the question and had answered him. But he didn't know where it came from or how it happened. And that it's kind of like what he talks about. That you can bring about a change in somebody's life like that. That was kind of the way he described them. It's very special beings.
I think when we approach our lives with that same attention to being our true self, when we approach the living of our lives as a journey into love, a relationship with love, we are reaching into those realms, those realms where silent ones, where truth that is beyond words and language exists. We are able to reach into that. And I guess my point in saying this is, no matter what belief system you have, no matter what religion you have, what theology, philosophy, spiritual path, whatever it is you are involved in right now, in the way you live your life, the way we live our lives, if we pursue it with the utmost amount of love and gratitude every day, and we recognize that our path is our path, but that everyone and everything is also on their path, but all paths intersect in the road to love, right? All paths intersect to the road to love. And that if there's ever a question, of trying to understand someone or something, if we look through the lens of love, as Doug talks about these lenses, we look through the lens of love, and if we live what we chose, what we believe, what we're learning, what we're dedicated to, whatever it is, if we live that authentically, looking for every day, where is love taking me? What is love saying to me? What is love calling from inside of me to come out? Come out, right? What is love calling to? If we do that, no matter what we believe, what we read, what we do, what we say, what we join, whatever it is, if we're coming from love, we're coming from common ground, and we're following that pathway to the divine, because in the end, it's all love, And the chapter that really caught me, if I may, Doug, this is on page 97 of the Hidden Teachings. The importance of that relationship to each other, that relationship to ourselves, and that relationship to the divine is, I am you and you are me. I am you, you are me, oh friend. Don't run from your own self. Don't think of me as a stranger. Don't push me away from your door. Your head and foot are disconnected from your endless rebelling. This is why your head feels the unkind smack of your foot. I am not separate from you. I am like your shadow. Oh, friend, don't fight your shadow with a dagger. You are a tree with 1,000 shadows on every side. Love your shadows. Don't cut them off from your being. Bring the shadows to the light so they fade away. Reveal your glowing face like a sunrise. The heart of your being is disturbed by your hesitation. Sit on the throne. Don't avoid leading your whole being. Reason is the crown, said Ali in a parable. Now grant the crown a new jewel from your whole being. Wow.
Yeah, we go on to go through those lines one by one to explain what this is really getting at. And one of the key when we first started translating was realizing he used, I am your shadow. Of course, psychologists know the meaning of the word shadow. That's a term. And he was speaking it 700 years before, modern psychology talked about using that term. It was the same thing. He was talking about, don't separate yourself from your shadow. The shadow is you. It's a part of you. It's like your child.
Yeah.
You just need to take back into your home and, bring it back into show your love to your shadow, that you are not separate. You will stop, thinking about it as something else or someone else, but love it. And it makes all the difference. It changes everything. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Rumi was ahead of his time, or he was beyond time. One day. Yeah.
Do we have other questions before I go on with one more question for Doug? Do you have any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Is this recorded? Is it shareable?
Yes, this is going to be recorded on my Facebook Live, on my Facebook page first. Then I will edit it and I will put it on my YouTube channel. And I post all of that information. I will post that on Facebook. And you found out about this one way or another. The same place you found out about this, you'll find the information about where to watch it again and where to send people to watch it. So I'll make sure that I get that information to you. And that brings up something that I want to talk to Doug about and you about. Is that your only question? Have I answered it?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. You're welcome. Doug, we mentioned a little earlier in the conversation about quantum physics, about the quantum. And when we had a previous conversation, I had asked you, how is it, you went into all of this incredible depth and research on the spiritual essence of Rumi's teachings and poems. You made a comment that actually it was Rumi and his writings that were part of what stimulated you to go deep into quantum physics and into the study of quantum, because you saw the connection between what he was talking about all those hundreds of years ago and what scientists are now beginning to discover and see as common, reality. Could you talk a little bit about that connection and how that led you to quantum physics?
Sure. One of the things I got from Rumi after a while, and I discovered it by accident, having studied his lens, the lens of seeing from the heart, I began to notice something that when I was faced with something new, unknown, I was able to learn it and get into it and understand it far quicker, because I was using some of the techniques that I had learned from Rumi's. In other words, it's like getting to know a new friend. How do you spend time? You're with them, you share with them, you try and listen to them, you exchange, you do things together, and you get to know them. And that's a different kind of way of learning. But when you're facing something that's beyond your understanding, it's beyond your awareness, how do you learn? How do you step into the unknown? How do you deal with the unknown? And I discovered you basically feel your way along, like you were getting to know a friend. It's just, you feel your way along in the dark, right? Until finally the pieces start to come together and you get it. And it just clicks and you suddenly get it. That's the lens clicking in. You've but found a new lens that makes sense of it. So when I saw this happening, I started questioning, okay, how valid is this? Is this really something that can work for anything? And I said, well, I'm going to test this. And I'm going to test this by finding the hardest possible thing there is to understand. And I'm going to try to understand it. So I picked quantum physics. And even the quantum physicists say, don't even try to understand it. You'll lose your mind. It's impossible to understand. So I basically dove in. The process I used was reading tons and tons of books and articles, the latest research and everything. And as soon as I got done reading it, throwing it away into the back of my thoughts and just trying to get to know, what did it feel like? What was I thinking? What occurred to me? And actually, I started having dreams, and all kinds of dreams were going on. So clearly stuff was going on in the inner. And I felt completely confused, a state of confusion, which is a good state, because it means the subconscious is learning. It means some inner part of you is sorting it out. And it's a state of not knowing. That state is the predecessor to knowing. And so I knew I was okay with it, but it was very uncomfortable. And then one day I had a dream that woke up and I was in the quantum world and I saw exactly how the quantum world worked. And it was about relationships. The relationships were the key. And then suddenly I got it. It clicked for me. The problem with quantum states is they can't be seen objectively, right? The results of them can be seen, but not objectively. They can't be measured objectively. As soon as you try to measure a quantum state, it disappears. It loses its quantum. Okay? What I came to realize is because the quantum state itself is a relationship state. That's what a quantum state is. And once I had that, suddenly it all opened up. Now I had to see, does this hold up as a theory? And it took me basically 10 years to show that it does hold up. So there's a third state of matter. You have the subjective, you have the objective, and you have the relationship state. And the relationship state is something as basic and fundamental as everything else in the world. So that was what led. It was a long road, but that's what it started from. So.
Bill Bevins shared this quote. I'm going to paste it into the chat for everybody, but the quote is from the father of quantum physics, Max Planck, one of the foremost physicists on the planet, and he said, "Spirit is the original basis of all matter, reality, and true existence." Very cool. Very cool how this all connects. Yeah. Well, this has opened the door. And I think, Doug, if you're willing to do so, I'd love to have you back on the show again in the near future and talk more about these lenses of perception, and which is another one of your books, and also this whole idea of how spirituality and quantum physics and quantum theory connect, and how we can use them not only in our own personal lives, but also in our personal spiritual pursuits, and that there doesn't have to be science and spirituality as opposing forces, that they in fact support each other. And that will be a wonderful discussion, and let everybody know that was here today. We'll post when we're going to have that, and invite you all to partake in it. I do want to one more time here make sure that for those of you who have not had the pleasure of experiencing Doug's books, the Hidden Teachings of Rumi, we talked about quite a bit, and also It Is What It Is, the Personal Discourses of Rumi. Highly recommend that you pursue one of two ways to get them. The first is if you do make a $10 donation to a charity that is supporting the hurricane victims, and you send me that receipt, I will personally purchase for the first 5 people that do so. I will personally purchase both of these books of Doug's, and I will ship them to you at my cost. That's the first 5 people who make a donation to one of the hurricane support charities and send me a copy of your receipt. Beyond that, if those of you are interested, I highly recommend you visit spiritualdialogues.com, what you see on the screen here. I'm still going through it and finding gems in there, so I recommend that you go to spiritualdialogues.com and take a look at some of the other works, the other 8 books or so that Doug has written. Also, there's great videos of very insightful interviews and lectures that Doug has done, and I'm still making my way through them and enjoying them, and I invite you to do so as well. So spiritualdialogues.com, great place to visit. And again, if you choose to make a donation to the hurricane relief organization of your choice, send me a receipt of that $10 donation or more. The first 5 people that do so, I will send a set to each of you of these 2 books of Doug's. Well, Doug, do you have anything else you would like to share before we close tonight that you'd love to leave the viewers and listeners with?
One thing does come to mind. One of the things that Rumi talks about is largely how much these relationship states are existing on an inner basis. Like they're not objective, they're not in the outer world, they're inner. And that they connect to many other beings, not just physical beings. And he talks about this. He has examples of this where he talks about these beings. And it comes to me just at this moment that the experience we're having here together is actually being joined by others in the inner worlds, in the inner beings. If I can feel the presence. And it just, so I wanted to give a thank you to them as well for joining.
Thank you, Doug. And I apologize to Valentina. I didn't see your hand raised. If you're still with us, if you want to unmute yourself, let me see if she's still on the call here. Some folks don't have the ability of doing the golden hand raise. So I
Yeah, I'm not
apologize.
used to it.
Good.
What I wanted to say that Doug was talking, the change sometimes brings the good thing. No matter, I lived through the World War II, and I was born in Ukraine. So if it was not for the war and my father didn't like the communists, I would still be in Ukraine. But it happened that, and I would not be in spiritual path, and I wouldn't have the experience of not having love, but being love. I am love in expression. So that I went through recently. I went through too much pain. Well, and the medicine a little bit mixed up my brain, but I'm still here and I'm still learning. But the things that kept me going through all those pills is remembering my secret word and the bhakti, love. And I knew that I am love and I will go through this because I am love in expression. And nothing can take that from me. Nothing in the world. And I'm very grateful for your books and for your everything. I read it a long time ago. And I don't think I have the other book, that second book of Rumi, The Secret. I don't
Right.
have that. I have to purchase it. So I'm grateful for you being here. And Mike, I'm grateful you don't, you know me. You know me. So I am, oh, Mike, by the way, my son died. My son passed away.
So sorry to hear that, Valentina.
Sweetheart, my life was not a bed of roses, but realizing that I am love, it's worth everything. All my pain, all my losses, all my anything. So I'm very grateful, Mike, and I'm very grateful, Doug, for being here. And I know, Mike, I'm not following all your, but me, I was in very bad shape. I'm coming along. Yeah, and I'm grateful, Mike. Thank you.
We are grateful that you joined us, and we are grateful for your beautiful heart.
I am grateful to one person, Nancy.
Yes.
Nancy, thank you so much for sending me the invite. I'm very grateful, very grateful. And Mike, if you put me on your list and send me the invite, I will join you.
I will be most happy to.
Because I am coming back.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, if there's, Doug, did you want to say something?
Love, their order is love is everything, and I am love in expression. That's it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, Valentina. Yeah, great,
And
a great.
when love speaks to us, we listen.
Well, love has spoken tonight, and I am very grateful to all of you that you followed love and made your way here tonight to share this time with us. Doug, I'm very, very grateful you spent so much time with us tonight. Grateful for your books and all of your work to lift the consciousness and to open the hearts of people around the world. We truly appreciate you and are part of our family here, folks who've been joining this show for the last 4 years now that we've been doing it. I appreciate you all who've been joining us on Sundays. Doug, appreciate you being here. We're definitely going to have you back and talk more about the interconnection of spirit, divine love, and quantum physics. I think it'll be a lively discussion. Wish you all a wonderful evening, a wonderful week, a wonderful life. I do love you all individually and collectively, and I'm so grateful we've had this time tonight. And if you're not a Facebook friend of mine, seek me out on Facebook and become a Facebook friend, and you'll be able to watch the replays of this interview and all the other interviews. There's probably hundreds of them that are on there. And also you'll be able to watch that on my YouTube channel. So with that, Doug, thank you. We love you. We're grateful for you. Thank you all. Love you all. Grateful for you all. And we will see you next time, whenever that next time is for you. But I'll be here. And we'll see you all again soon. Take care.